Is that the bills be now read a second time. I call the member for Balmain.
Thank you, Mr Temporary Speaker. I rise to make some brief comments to the bill before the House today. Mr Temporary Speaker, as you've heard from the member for Ballina, we Greens have serious concerns about coal seam gas and other mineral exploration and mining activities in this state, and the member for Ballina has outlined many of those clearly, including the fact that the bill fails to address community, chief scientist or PAC demands for clear demarcation around which areas are off limits to coal and gas extraction. CSG will still be allowed in northern rivers. Coal mining is still allowed in our best agricultural land, for example the Shenhua Watermark coal mine on Liverpool Plains, and there's no clear legislative bans on CSG or coal mining in our water catchments or biodiversity hotspots. We believe that landholders should have the right to lock the gate, and that's something we've been supporting in the Parliament, in the community, and to the greatest of our ability. We are pleased that there's been some acceptance of ICAC recommendations in regard to the process of issuing new authorities, but we still know that a great corruption risk comes from political donations, and I'll be addressing that briefly very soon. We're pleased that the EPA is the lead agency and enforcement of gas activity, and this ends a key conflict of interest that the Department of Resources had as both the issuer of licences and the lead enforcement agency. But of course, as you'll know, with the cruise ship terminal in White Bay, concern still remains about the EPA's record, and they need to lift their game, as the public really needs to have very strong confidence that they'll pursue companies that will pollute the environment and they will adequately punish them. Mr Temporary Speaker, I mentioned earlier the issue of corruption risk, and one of the reasons why it's so important that the government has taken on this approach to rewrite the legislative framework that exists around the issuing of approvals, the regulatory framework in general for mining companies. And I do acknowledge the Minister's comments that gas exploration licences in particular were awarded on a first-served, first-come basis, and there was no transparency. And we know that Labor has now changed that policy, which is to be welcomed, but it was an incredible lack of good process to see that that happen, and it was really a tragedy here for New South Wales. I just wanted to address very briefly, Mr Temporary Speaker, the challenge that the legislative framework has, because I'll draw your attention to the amendment to the Independent Against Corruption Bill, where after the independent panel, the review of the jurisdiction of the Independent Commission Against Corruption by the Honourable Murray Gleeson, AC, and Mr Brute McClintock, SC, they identified very clearly the corruption risk, and that's why the government introduced legislation when they amended the ICAC bill that said specifically focused on mining exploration. We propose that developers and other classes of proponents should also be included in this bill, but the government said only mining companies, and the legislation says, quote, fraud in relation to application for licences, permits or other authorities under legislation designed to protect the health and safety or the environment or designed to facilitate the management and commercial exploitation of resources. So mining was obviously a key issue that this government has taken up, and we believe, Mr Temporary Speaker, that it should also be taken up in the Electoral Funding and Disclosures Act. We have a ban on developers, we have a ban on alcohol, tobacco and gambling, the last three being subject of an amendment that we Greens moved that was supported by the Parliament. And we believe, considering the corruption risk in the mining, in the management and commercial exploitation of resources, miners should also be a banned class of donors when it comes to political donations. And that's something that I hope to be taking up with the government again, to ensure that we can have a regulatory framework that's driven by the science and the issues and not by developer contributions. I draw members' attention to the Honourable Jeremy Buckingham in the Upper House. Just have a look at the revolving door, the list of those MPs and former staffers who worked for mining companies, who worked for the Mineral Council, who worked for third-party mining lobbyists, who worked for APPEA, the Australian Petroleum Production Exploration Association, all those that have lobbied, worked in government and then lobbied for mining companies, whether it's Shenhua or other mining activities, and that's something that does concern people in the community. So, Mr Temporary Speaker, I think our position is very clear on this matter. There's some good improvements in this legislation, but we believe very strongly that mining companies should be a banned class of donors when it comes to political donations. We think that the McClintock-Gleeson report highlighted that. They specified the exploration and exploitation of mineral resources as being a specific issue to raise in the ICAC amendment bill, and we think that would be good public policy for that to be followed through on. Thank you.